Hey there friends, welcome back to the shop. So a little over a year ago I made a video, posted it on this Sloyd workbench, talking a little bit about how I made it and what I use for it. Now that I've had it for a little over a year, thought I would share some thoughts and some of the things that I would have done differently. Kind of hate to use the term mistakes, but mistakes were made, but that's how we learn. So if you're interested, stick with me. Mistake number one. Blank piece of paper. I should have made a plan. I had a rough idea of what I wanted to do up in my head. I had a pile of lumber and I designed this as I went. And that's how I do most of my projects because I just really enjoy that. That's fine when you're doing shop fixtures or small gift items, things that are easy to recover. But when you're talking about a piece of shop furniture or other fine furniture, you probably need to have a written plan. So I should have sketched it out on a piece of paper. There's free software out there that you could use if you want to take time to learn that. I don't know how to use those software, but at the bare minimum, I should have sketched it out. That may have helped me avoid some of the mistakes that I've made, some of the mistakes I made, maybe not. The reality is I just honestly didn't understand the nature of hand tool woodwork. I was just getting started into it. Probably still would have had mistakes, but having a written plan definitely would have helped. All right, as we talk through this, I'm not going to get into some of the poor craftsmanship. I talked about that on the original video that I posted. If you're interested in that, I'll post a link to that video as well so you can see some of the mistakes I made in terms of craftsmanship. What we're going to be talking about here is design elements. So the single biggest design problem I had were these legs. So you can see I actually inset the legs a little bit from the edge of the bench. I ran the 2x4 legs going this way, so along the length of the bench. This really created a lot of stability problems, especially once I got into the new shop and on a level floor. It really became obvious that things were just a little bit too wobbly. I added this piece later, and you can tell that's an add-on, kind of an afterthought. Functional, it works. It helped clear up the stability issue. Not very elegant, of course. So, you know, the first thing, major design thing I would do differently is the orientation of these legs. The legs, the 2x4s should have been rotated 90 degrees, so I'm getting the support this way. Also should have probably splayed them out a little bit, get them out to the outer edges of the bench to get a little bit more stability that way. So that's my number one error. Number two, in terms of the legs, is just the placement of the legs. They are in exactly the wrong spot. When I did this, I really wasn't planning on any type of vices. That's another problem we'll get to here in a few minutes. So by placing the legs right here, it actually forced me to move this vise back into the bench a little bit further than I'd want to. Had to end up adding this vise here at the end. So just the legs themselves, where they are placed, was not a good design choice either. So orientation of the legs and also placement of the legs, major design flaw there. All right, mistake number three, also a pretty important mistake, but not insurmountable, was the fact that I really didn't understand work holding. I didn't understand my needs. I'd watched a lot of videos on workbenches out there, thought I understood it, but obviously didn't. So my original thought were no vices at all, that I would use holdfast and dog holes, things like that. None of that really worked out. So I ended up adding vices later. Put the end vise, put a face vise on here, which also leads me to the next mistake I made, which is this vise with the extra long chop. In my previous video, I talked about how badly this thing racks with the long chop. I solved that issue by using these spacers that go in here. but I put this extra long chop on here thinking that I was going to joint long boards. The reality is that the work that I do that I enjoy doing is much smaller, and this long chop really has done me no good. So I just made the decision yesterday. I'm going to chop this thing down and leave it. I am not going to move this vise because it's actually become very handy for using jigs like this one. This is a 45-degree shooting board for putting miters on there. And that it's got a little cleat in here that sits in there. So the vise is going to stay, but the chop has got to go. I don't need the long chop, and probably need to reposition this one as well, just to make it a little bit more usable. The next issue is the use of Southern Yellow Pine 2x4s. It is what I had available. It was what I could afford at the time. So I really don't want to call that a mistake. That one was actually out of necessity. But just being able to flatten the bench has been a little bit of a challenge. But once I've gotten areas flat, it actually stays flat. It is very solid. It handles the pressure pretty well. So even though it is not my first choice, I would have preferred to have gone with some hardwood. It is a perfectly acceptable and workable solution. So there you have it. There's a few things that I would have liked to have done differently with this particular build, but even with that, and even with the fact that I am now in a full-size shop, I've got access to all my power tools, I have enough floor space to move around, I still find this bench is one of the most used tools in the shop. I've really developed into more of a hybrid woodworker now than just a pure power tool or hand tool woodworker. And an example is using this jig right here and a block plane. Actually, as I'm building a box for my daughter-in-law, I'm using this to miter the edges of the box to get me a nice tight fit, which started off at the power tools and then wound up here. So I really do love my bench. A couple of things that I would have done differently, but overall it has been a great addition to the shop. So if you're thinking about building one of these, there's a lot of good videos out there. Rex Kruger, for example, has a really good video on how to do it. Plenty of other people that will show you detailed builds, and hopefully you can avoid some of the mistakes that I made. All right, until next time, take care. God bless.